Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mailbox for the 7th of October 2011. My name is Totalbiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of community interaction, gaming discussion, and all that good stuff. You can email in mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, that is mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, with topics for future shows. The game in the background is Driver San Francisco, which is so good for screwing around in, I might point out. I don't really want to do any missions on it, I just want to muck about and crash into things. Like the DRM, for instance. I like to crash into that, run it over, and leave it bleeding on the side of the road. I'd like to apologize for the last couple of days. There hasn't been any Mailbox. One, because yesterday I had to really take a day to myself to deal with some fairly major immigration issues, and the day before that, well, the thing broke. I had it recorded and the whole thing fell to pieces. I had audio problems, so I don't really know why it did that, but it did. First email comes in right here from the one and the only Alec Bailey that says this. I've been playing the beta for Battlefield 3 recently because who in their right mind really hasn't, and I've been coming across a really annoying problem. Snipers. Now, not just any snipers, I'm talking about snipers on the attacking team. I've been placed in squads that were composed entirely of snipers. As you know, snipers on an attacking team contribute little to the team because they're not actually doing anything but sniping. These guys wouldn't even go on the charge. I was extremely frustrated at this because I actually wanted to win. If we were defending, I would have been okay with this because they're defending. So, anyway, this has gotten me to wondering, is this just a product of people doing what they believe the Recon class is supposed to do, i.e. sniping, or just people playing the beta and just going after kills and not attempting to actually win? Well, I've noticed this behavior as well, particularly on Operation Metro. You've probably noticed that little island you can sit on. You'll find that most mobile spawn points tend to be there, which is not all that helpful, honestly, for somebody on the attacking team. It's a pretty useless place to be. If you spawn on that island, you've got to swim across the water, and you just get shot to pieces when you're doing that. It's pretty horrible. I'm not a fan of it, and they put their mobile spawn points there, and nobody benefits from it. The problem, honestly, and I'm gonna have to point fingers at DICE here, is that they designed a class that has conflicting role definitions. If you are going to design a class that is supposed to be at the front, spotting enemies, placing mobile spawn points, being all stealthy-like, relaying information from the front to the team, then why did you give them a long-range rifle? More to the point, why did you give them a long-range rifle that shines in the sun, so it is literally impossible to hide in a bush or be stealthy in any way, shape, or form with this rifle out, because the sun will reflect on it and show where you are a mile away? That's dumb. Now, I understand why they did it to the actual rifle. That's fine. That's a good bit of balancing right there, because in Battlefield 3, foliage and things like that is a lot more detailed, it's a lot thicker, it's a lot easier to hide in. If you hadn't done that, then the dominance of snipers would be absolutely absurd. Thankfully, it is not as a result of that. The problem is that the role definitions are now even more mixed up than they were in Bad Company 2 with the Recon class, whereby people were also confused. Why do I have an M95 Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle, and yet you want me to be at the front with it? What am I supposed to do? No scope with this thing? Oh yes, this isn't actually Call of Duty. That doesn't work. Now, in Bad Company 2, what you had is the Recon class with motion mines, and that made them absolutely invaluable for taking points and, of course, for taking MCOM stations in the rush mode. You needed those things. They're incredibly good, really awesome things, and they gave you a huge advantage. So having a Recon at the front made a lot of sense, and you'd find a lot of people either went with the VSS, which of course was the automatic sniper rifle with the 20-round clip that could be used in close quarters combat quite easily, or they went with the one and only wonderful, fantastic shotgun. Yeah? Go with a shotgun, or hell, even go with a Thompson or the Garand. But they didn't take a sniper rifle. Now, this time around, you definitely shouldn't be taking a sniper rifle, and yet you don't have all that many options. Especially at low level, the only real option you've got is to go with the 870 MCS shotgun, which in the outside area of Operation Metro is kind of bad. It's a good weapon, don't get me wrong, but it's not exactly an extreme range combat weapon, is it? That, and it's very freaking loud. So it's a little easy to be revealed with that thing. So I think the role definition for Recon is all wrong. In Battlefield 2, you had 7 classes, one of which was a sniper. Now, honestly, the Recon is a mixture of 2 Battlefield 2 classes, the Spec Ops and the Sniper. Now, the Sniper was a sniper in that game. That's what he did. That was his role. He was a sniper. But they decided to mix those 2 roles together. The thing about a Recon is that a Recon should be given the tools to get sort of behind enemy lines, get to the front, do scouting, and of course stealthily do damage. The Spec Ops class is a perfect example of this. They had a short-range carbine, which was very, very nice indeed. They had C4 and they had a silenced pistol. Really damn useful. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is what the Recon class should be in Battlefield 3. The problem is it's not. It's in this weird place that doesn't really make an awful lot of sense. And I've explained why from a gameplay perspective. So I'm not really happy with the way the Recon is set up in Battlefield 3. I honestly think there should be another class. I think there should be a dedicated sniper class that, of course, has its numbers limited because people will insist on mucking about with snipers like that. And as a direct result, I think the game kind of suffers because the Recon is not as useful as the other three classes. We're actually seeing a massive overabundance right now of medics on any map that's infantry heavy. And by medic, of course, I mean assault. You know, it's like you're the best in combat and you can also res people and you can give people medkits. Well, that's a really good all-around class to pick, isn't it? You're always going to be beneficial. The Engineer is certainly getting some popularity on Caspian Border for obvious reasons, but the support, and more so the Recon, are really being left out in the cold somewhat, and I am not a fan. This one comes in from Brandon that says, I'm an enormous fan of Demon Souls, and now, consequently, Dark Souls. One of the great merits of this series is its brutally unforgiving but fair level of challenge. While waiting for my copy of Dark Souls to come in the mail, I was passing the time by reading some of the critics' reviews. I noticed that many game critics praise the old-school difficulty and player freedom present in these games, while lamenting the most recent decade of games' tendencies towards hand-holding and infantile difficulty levels. However, many of these shining reviews were coming from reviewers who gave equally shining reviews to games like BioShock, for example, where there's literally a voice constantly squawking in your ear telling you where to go next, or Halo 3, among many others, with its regenerating health and waypoints at every turn. If these reviewers miss challenging, rewarding games like the Souls games so much, why do they constantly reward developers with rave reviews for producing what amounts to interactive cutscenes broken up by short, easy segments of shoot man with gun? You can't have your cake and eat it too, game reviewers. Well, honestly, I can see why they would praise a game like BioShock and also praise a game like Dark Souls. For instance, BioShock has an awful lot going for it that isn't the difficulty level. I will be the first to admit that BioShock has a really bad set of difficulty levels. I played and beat the game on hard very, very easily without any problems at all. And that was because while, yes, the game did tell you where to go next, there was an awful lot of exploration in the meantime. I'd like to compare BioShock to a long road. And this road, you know, takes you to the point that you wish to go to. And you know that it's, in fact, the only road that will actually get you there. But you don't really have to be there in a hurry. Yeah? You're not required to get there at any specific time. And there are beautiful forests to the left and the right of you as you walk down this road. And you are free to wander off into those forests at any time. And you may discover all manner of wonders, whether or not it be riches, whether or not it be interesting cultural artifacts, and of course, whether or not it be danger. And you could go back to the road whenever you feel like it. Without too much of a problem, you'll always know your way back there, and you can sidle along at your own pace. That's really what I view BioShock as. Yes, it was too easy, but you could wander around. There were all sorts of things to discover. Now, I would like to point out the fallacy of not so much what you said, but what you quoted there. You're saying that the critics praise the old-school difficulty. The Souls games are not old-school difficulty. I know what old school difficulty was. I played it. And it's not Souls. It is not. This is a very new school form of difficulty. It's a very new school form of extreme difficulty, but old school difficulty was nowhere near as fair. This is what you've got to understand about old school games and difficulty. Old school games were specifically designed to do two things. One, lengthen the experience because the games weren't all that long to begin with, and two, to make you pay more damn quarters into that machine. Yeah, a lot of these games were arcade games. They were designed to be unfair. And that difficulty, that old school difficulty, is punishing because it's unfair, not because it's hard. The thing about Souls is that every time you die, you know exactly why it happened, and you can learn from your mistakes. When it comes to older school games, that difficulty comes from unfairness, whether it comes to unforeseen traps, the idea of blind jumps, having to go trial and error on the gameplay. And Demon's Souls really doesn't have a huge amount of that in it. It's mostly down to individual skill and awareness of your environment, paying attention to the clues that are given to you, and of course, learning the fights and making sure that you are doing the right thing. There are no gimmicks to Demon's Souls difficulty. It is just punishingly difficult with very little margin for error. It is never, however, unfair, and it joins a very, very small group of games in which that is the case. In fact, the only one that I can think of, aside from Demon's Souls, off the top of my head, is God Hand. God Hand was equally new school in terms of difficult, challenging gameplay because it was able to show you exactly why you failed. You were never, ever left feeling cheated by that game. Ever. You always knew that it was your fault, and you could always analyze why and come around and fix it. Now, I want to be absolutely clear. It is fine for games to be linear. It is fine for games to hold your hand as long as they make up for it in other areas. There are some games that hold your hand too much, and I don't like that. There are some games that are simply too linear. But there are other games where I don't really care. For instance, Bulletstorm. Some people criticized Bulletstorm for being extremely linear. I could not give a damn. That game was not about exploration. That game was about set-piece battles and awesome gunplay. And honestly, exploration had nothing to do with it and would have probably detracted from the experience. It was a very well-paced and extremely enjoyable FPS, but my god was it on rails. Did it matter? Not a huge amount. There were times when I thought, oh god, what the hell is going on? Why can't I get over this? I mean, for God's sake, in that game you can't even jump. But most of the time I didn't care because I was having a lot of fun with challenging and awesome, spectacular battles. It's okay for a game to do that. When it's not okay is when it compromises the gameplay too much. And I think BioShock's difficulty level did compromise that somewhat. It actually compromised the fear that you gained from that game. For instance, at the start, it was kind of scary for the first 20 minutes, and then you realize nothing could really hurt you too much. You know, the big daddies ceased to be intimidating because you could very easily deal with them. You knew the tricks, and the game lost a lot of its atmosphere. That's a problem. That's where difficulty can be an issue. And yes, I do think that some reviewers do reward developers for coming up with easy games. They do so too much. Some reviewers are in the business of telling gamers what they want to hear, and really, that's gamers' fault. And gamers should be constantly questioning this kind of thing. Games are expensive. We shouldn't have reviewers simply pandering to a particular opinion, a camp of fanboys or whatever, simply to get ratings. And of course, on the flip side, we shouldn't have reviewers being overly critical for no justifiable objective reason, simply to draw the ire of nerds and bring in traffic via the age-old and horrific practice of nerd baiting. This one comes in from Josh that says, "Hi TB, I was on the train last week and a particular Metro item caught my eye. Normally I accept that the Metro is one of the most poorly written, biased abominations of a paper. That will be because it is. However, this article made me laugh as to how backwards it was. There was a scientific study carried out on 42 individuals. That right there is a huge problem. The article then goes on to say that it is shown that most gamers cannot tell the difference between reality and fantasy. This, based off a study of 42 people, is being described as fact. My question is, why do people feel the need to attack games with baseless arguments such as these?" Well, in this case, it's because they flat out lied and misrepresented the study. So I have information here, and quotes from the people that actually did it. Now, this particular accusation was leveled by both the Metro and the Daily Mail, who are both disgraceful tabloids written by talentless idiots. In this case, the culprit goes by the name of Jenny Hope, who I hope falls down a well. And this is in regards to the idea of a phenomenon called games transfer phenomena. And the co-author of the study goes by the name of Professor Mark Griffiths, and he explained that the way that the report and the study had been presented to the world was absolutely 110% inaccurate and horrendous. Quote, "For one thing, we never said that in our paper, and for a second thing, the findings don't even hint at it. The press release I put out yesterday regarding the study was completely neutral, not one negative thing in there. The Metro obviously had an agenda, because all the reporter said was that he wanted to know about the negative stuff. I told him that the paper was primarily positive, or at least neutral. He said, I don't want to know about that, I want to know about the negative stuff. So I just went through what we did, what we found, and what we were doing next." And the annoying thing is that they've had a full copy of the study available to them, both of these papers, without too much of a problem, but they did it anyway. And you want to know why? Because sensationalism sells newspapers. And when it comes to the Daily Mail, it's primarily read by old people. True story. There are not an awful lot of people aged 18 to 25 that read the Daily Mail. Why? Because it's certainly not aimed at them. It is aimed at middle-class, middle-aged white people. It's as simple as that. And there's nothing racist or inaccurate about that. That is their primary demographic. You can tell by simply reading the damn thing. They wouldn't be so obsessed with Marks and Spencer's if that wasn't the case. You want to know what middle-class, middle-aged white people don't like? Video games. Yes, indeed. They are not a huge fan of those things, simply because they don't understand them, and because they view them as the great evil. And this tends to happen whenever you get a generation of that age and something new comes along. They immediately fear it because they don't understand it, and they view it as a bad influence on the youth, whether or not it be as an unproductive waste of time or as indeed a violence-inducing evil electronic drug. This is a problem that society in general is rife with, in the fact that people have, most of the time, a set of beliefs that they don't really want to change, and if those beliefs are challenged, they find that uncomfortable, and they are willing to retreat into the realms of no logic whatsoever, and to simple emotional knee-jerk responses, which tend to not have any basis in fact, and will generally withdraw further and further away into a realm of insanity. So what I would say to people, and this goes to everyone, myself included, is always, always, always question everything you think or believe. Consistently challenge your beliefs with other people's opinions, take those into account. And I think we've all been guilty of not doing that, and we've all been guilty of being defensive over something that we own, whether or not it simply be a belief that we hold or something that we've created. I know I'm guilty of it. There are times when I get upset, I get angry over things people say about my videos that were not meant maliciously, but they challenged my status quo and the way that I feel comfortable doing my work. And you know what? That might not be the best way. And I'm guilty of that. I throw my hands up and say, I'm guilty of it. Not a perfect human being, and you know what, I feel bad about that, but I think all that I'm really trying to say to everybody in general is it's okay to not like things as long as you're not a dick about it, and try and accept that some people like different things to you, and that there is no right or wrong answer to a lot of these decisions, and that personal preference is king. Alright folks, that is me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the Mailbox. I will see you next time.
You must get your blood pressure.